to another episode of Bass Fishing for Noobs. I'm Susie Q.
Hey guys, it's Sean. Happy to be back.
Glad to have you back, Sean. We definitely missed you.
So how's life been?
Life hasn't been too bad. We've had a pretty good summer so far. I mean, we've, knock on wood, only had, the one really hot week, but like I went out yesterday and today and like it's still been beautiful. Mm-hmm. Like this morning, I think it was like 68 for August. I was like, this is just unreal. I mean, it was amazing.
I'm just waiting for that to come back and bite us because it's been amazing here too. So
yeah. I mean, granted, we've been in a little bit of a drought most of the season, but, we got a good amount of rain Saturday morning. And then today, too, we got a little bit of rain. So, but still need a lot of catch up. But still, overall, I mean, not too bad. So.
Good.
Yep. And then let's see here. Just, a little reminder for folks out there. Just, mark it on your calendars for next year. The 2024 Pebble and Fin Open on Dale Hollow, Saturday, April 27th and Sunday, April 28th. We had the biggest payouts for big bass on both day one and day two. Over $2,000. We're hoping to break that record again next year. Mark your calendars. Come on out. Sign up on Tourney X. It's an awesome time.
Absolutely. I can't wait to get back down
there. I know. I'm so excited. It's Dale Hollow. I mean, killer smallmouth. So, yeah. Well, speaking of killer smallmouth and other large fish, our special guest today is none other than Mr. Tyler Cole.
How we doing?
Welcome to the new show, sir.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Awesome. So, Tyler, give us a little bit of a rundown about who you are for the folks who may not know you, where you're from, how you got into kayak fishing, and kind of how you got to where you are today.
Tyler Cole. I live in Manchester, Iowa. Recently married. Got 4 great kids, an amazing wife that handles almost everything while I'm gone. But I drive truck. I deliver storage containers for a living. I mean, 4 days a week, so helps me get out on the water a little more. I got into kayak fishing 8 years ago, and I just did it. I jumped into a couple onlines because I mean back then there wasn't near the opportunity there is now, and I got my butt kicked. Like, straight up got my butt kicked, and I'm like, I'm not doing this anymore. And then 2017 come, and I won the Iowa Angler of the Year. Went to the Tournament of Champions in Texas, won that. Qualified for Hobie Worlds in 2018. Turned around, came back 2019, won on my Angler of the Year in Iowa again. 2020, I think, was my first Bassmaster win. And then I got another Bassmaster win this year. And I'm looking for that All-American win now. Or the AOY. But I got into it. It's a pretty deep story. Probably not the greatest for this show, but we had a little drinking problem. We got rid of that, and we took up kayak fishing, and now here we are. Been 9 years sober, and August 24th.
That's awesome. So,
yeah. Heck yeah, man.
This is definitely taken me a lot of better places than where I was headed. So.
That's awesome. That definitely sounds like a cool story. I would love to hear that at some point because I think that can benefit a ton of people too. So yeah definitely.
It's one thing I've always chronicled along my journey. It's not something that you can ignore in your life. If there is, there's an addiction in your life and that's where you end up. I mean, you have to channel to get out. And I was fortunate enough to be able to just put it down and walk away from it. And then I bought a kayak just for fishing rivers, just to give me something to do in that time that I was normally at a bar. And it really helped, and it progressed to where I'm at. I mean, I've been running tournament organizations since 2018, and it's been quite a ride.
I was going to say, I mean, that's one thing about our sport that I guess I think gets overlooked a lot is the therapeutic value of it. And I know, like, I do a lot with Heroes on the Water, and it's a very therapeutic outfit for them. And I've heard about all sorts of organizations that talk about addictions and stuff, and it being a great outlet for getting away from that. So the more we can shine the spotlight on that aspect of the sport, I think the better too.
Absolutely, and that's I mean, everybody falls in life. It's just where you go with it from there. And anybody that is battling with it today, reach out. I have zero issue. I'll talk to anybody about it, and I that's one thing that I will make myself available for 24 hours a day. So,
very cool. Very cool.
Awesome. Glad to hear.
So can you talked about how you fished for quite a while and got your butt kicked, and then what changed in 2017? Can you look back and pinpoint something? Or
I literally in March of 2017 I bought my first dedicated bass rod. Like, I was always I walleyes, crappies, catfish, just that we have a lot of small rivers here in eastern Iowa, so being able to access them with the kayak was awesome. I mean, we'd go out and just smack these big walleyes. And a buddy of mine called me, and it was the end of 16, and he's like, "Hey, did you see these bass tournaments they're having online?" I'm like, "Well, God, bass are stupid. We should be able to catch those." And jumped in, and I mean, they worked me over. I'd catch 3 18s a month, and I'm like, God, these are pretty good fish. These are big bass for Iowa. No, they weren't even close. And so, like, I started studying, doing a lot of study. Like, but my biggest problem when I got into it was I started to watch how everybody else fished, and everybody fishes their own way. Like, we could sit here between the three of us and discuss, techniques that work for Susie or techniques that work for you, Sean, and none of us would fish it the same. So it was more of a study in, what the bass do, where they're at, because it's like I said, if no matter if a bass is hungry or not, it's going to eat if you drop something on its head. It's like the tub of popcorn. You just got back from a buffet. You sit down on the couch. Somebody sets a tub of popcorn next to you. You're going to eat it. That's all. I mean, that is a largemouth bass through and through.
Dan Perry used to be on our show, and he used to call that the Dorito Bite. You
Yep,
put a Dorito in front of
exactly.
somebody, and even if you're not hungry, you
Yep.
put that Dorito there long enough, and eventually you're going to be like, all right, I'm going to eat the Dorito.
Yep, so much truth in it. I mean, how many times you made 5, 6, 7 casts in there? We're not going to get up and walk to the kitchen to get popcorn, but if it's sitting next to us, we're going to eat it. So, but yeah, I started studying, like, how bait fish move and what they do, the crawfish, what they do, what the seasonal patterns of bluegills, and just kind of started to tie it all together. Rather than worrying about the technique that I was using, I was trying to figure out, where all those things come together. And once you learn, like, because you can go through your year almost week to week, and the bass are doing just about the same thing, so as long as, like, I took tons of notes. I have notebooks upon notebooks at every outing, and once I write it down, then it's sunk in, but I can go back and be like, all right, so I'm going here on this certain time of this time of year, and I can compare it, and it's really good information to have. And you'll notice that you can look back on it quite a bit too, and just, say, all right, you got certain times the crawfish spawn, you got certain times the shad spawn, the bluegill spawn, the crappie spawn, they all tie together as bait to keep these things eaten. So
interesting. That's one thing, I have heard, pretty consistently is that, logging your outings is really good. And it's something that I don't do as well. I use the, what was the button that everybody had on their hats for a while?
Angler
Angler.
R.
Yeah.
Angler,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I used that for a while and didn't, do it religiously. And now I use a different app that just records my location and my catches, but it definitely doesn't give me all the information. Like if I actually went home and sat down and documented it, water temperature, wind conditions, water clarity, all that stuff, and
Cold
then,
fronts.
Yep.
Cold fronts are
Yes.
huge because as tournament anglers, we battle them every weekend. There's a tournament. It is just a given. Temperature drops, temperature swings, the wind dying out, everything like that. It's all correlated together.
And knowing, how to handle that, say you're crushing it in practice, and then exactly what you're saying is, tournament day comes and here comes the good old cold front to change everything that you spent a few days nailing down, and to know how to pivot with that is definitely what makes a difference.
Yeah, and your time on the water. Everybody asks, they're like, "Wow, how are you so successful?" It's like because I literally, when I first started, I spent 5, 6, 7 days a week on the water after work. Every weekend, didn't matter if it was snowing, raining, hailing, thunderstorms, nasty cold fronts. Like I want an information overload so bad that I want more. I want more, and I've been out on the trail for it's been 7 years now, and like I found there's been one time that I didn't know the pattern, because like you have rising water, the fish move to the bank, right? You have muddy water, they move to cover. All right, basics. Now you have dropping water and it turns muddy. The Bassmaster Classic of Possum Kingdom, and I skunked 2 days because I didn't know what to do, and it's just stuff like that, like you'll learn, how to make your adjustments, whether you're fishing just standard lake or whether you're fishing reservoir or whether you're fishing, your oxbows or your rivers. Everything is so much different out here. And everybody kind of keys in on one thing, like so you watch the elites and they're really good on, the southern lakes, like your Toledo Bends, your Forks, your Rayburn, stuff like that. Well, then you get them into the northern swing and they're just lost. So it takes that's these northern fish are way different than the southern fish, and that's I tell these guys from up here, we go to Texas every year. We've been going down there for 7 years now. And I tell them, I'm like, they're a different animal. They're not the same fish we have up here. They'll go from 2 to 22 feet overnight because of a 4-point pressure drop. And it's like, come on. ours up here, they're on every piece of structure we have.
Right. No, and I've heard that, and for folks like myself who just don't get to travel that much, like I've spent my whole life in the Northeast, really, and I ventured to Dale Hollow. That's about the farthest I've traveled. So you put me in Texas, and I'm sure I'm gonna struggle, at least a little bit, until I get my feet under me. But yeah. And just because you watch YouTube and you see, the tactical bassing guys crushing it on a bait, they're half the time fishing the California Delta, which isn't gonna mean squat to me fishing the Susquehanna River,
Yeah. Yep. And that's the big thing too. Everybody looks at the YouTube videos and they're like, oh, look at that. They're just crushing them here. It's like, yeah, but how many hours did they video before they could put together a 22-minute clip? I mean, it's just the time on the water is huge, and paying attention to your little details is the biggest. Like Texas this year, when I was down there, I literally was sitting in 10th place after day one, and I found an area on the map that looked a lot like our river here, the Mississippi. That's my home body of water, and there's a river that flows into Lake of the Pines, and there was just kind of an offsetting little dog leg in it. And I'm like, that's got to be clear water because there's no current flowing in it. There's no main flow going into it. but it's still going to have, your wind change. So you're going to be able to keep fishing there. And we got into town on Monday, and I went out and I fished it. And sure enough, the bigs were there. They were in there spawning. They were up in the buckbrush. And I mean, I ran through it once real quick and hung 94. And I'm like, I'm out of here. I'm done. I left it all week long. And I went back on Friday for the tournament, and they were gone. They were done spawning. All that was left was the males. And so I learned an interesting lesson that day, that bass will spawn and run. So, and the river that was there was it was so muddy, like you couldn't even back off to try to find them, because everything comes up in steps, in the same way, when they move back out, they move out in steps. And so once you kind of have those steps in place, you can chase them, but I had nothing. And so I flipped plan and I went to a different spot, and, paying attention to detail paid off in that tournament, because I fished one area. I caught one real good fish in the morning. Other than that, I had 4 when I was going to run to the next cove. And I got to the next cove, and I mean, I'd caught fish there on Tuesday, but they weren't quality. They were 16, 17. And as we know in Texas, that's nothing. And I went back into this little jetty, and I was throwing just a little swim bait. I mean, and I caught one fish in there. Well, I was coming out. I watched the grass move, like this fish took off, and I'm like, I haven't seen a carp in this place since I've been here. So sure enough, I started to target just the little sticks of grass that were sticking up, and in the next 2.5 hours, I put up 104 inches.
And that's crazy. So if you wouldn't have happened to see that one fish move, how long would it have taken you to start targeting that? Yeah,
that was this cove I was in. There was 80 boats in there. I mean, because there's a college tournament going on and a high school tournament going on at the same time, and they're all just flipping Texas rigs, because that's what you do in Texas. But I mean, this guy, I had 2 guys. I went out to this little island, and it just had some of that grass, and that's all I looked at the rest of the day was once I saw that. Because I went up to the next point, and there was some grass sticking up, and I caught a 20 off that. And then I shot over to this island, and I caught a 19.5, and then I caught 2 17s back to back, an 18.5, a 19.5, and a 22.
Oh wow.
And these 2 guys in a boat come flying over to me, and they're like, dude, we just watched you throw back like 20 pounds. He's like, we're sitting on 16. Like, what are you throwing? And I'm like, just a black chatterbait. Like, that was it. And I was just waking it, keeping it up high in the water column, because it got really cold. We had a really hard cold front. And I think those fish had moved up and were just sunning themselves coming off the post spawn. Or, right in that, just a few days later. But I mean, just crazy like that, and it's just those little details, that make such a difference when you're out there. You see so many guys fishing with earphones in and everything else, and they're just chucking and whining, and you get to that point in the day where you're like, all right, this is stupid. But like I said, I've won way more tournaments from noon to 3 than I ever have from 6 to 9.
Okay.
So
it pays to definitely pay attention to your surroundings, and whether that's, following the birds or, I've heard that so many times, and, just keeping your eye out for bait fish or, all sorts of little things that might make a difference in putting a pattern together.
Yeah. Yep. It's huge. It's like I've had a discussion the other day, with smallmouth, if they're not biting one thing, change color, because they are so sensory overloaded. They are the most horrible fish in the world, and they shouldn't. Like, if I could eat every one of them, I would. I love them, because I fished like, I bet 15, 20 tournaments up on the Mississippi River, and I'm bound and determined to win a tournament up there on smallmouth. And a couple years ago for the Hobie, I'm like, all right, perfect. ran out to this rock point. I mean, nobody knows where this rock point's at. It's something I stumbled upon it. And I'm like, I literally put up 92 inches of smallmouth and 7 casts.
Oh my gosh.
My
This is it.
God.
This is
Yeah,
it.
you got this. Yeah.
This
you
is
got
like, get out of here. I'm leaving. Yeah, I caught one 10-inch fish before 11 o'clock on tournament day. Like, I hate those stupid things.
Yep.
Well, I mean, I did the same thing. I fished the Hobie BOS on the Susquehanna. That's my home river. And I thought, oh man, I got this. If there is a body of water, I know it is this river. And then I went. Ethan Jett came up, and him and I fished it together. I struggled. I could not find fish. I was like, what is going on? They were nowhere near anywhere where I thought they would be.
Yeah.
And I was like, I felt so bad because I had told Ethan, I was like, come up, I'll show you where they are. And then I felt bad because I totally led him astray because I just didn't have it. And I felt so silly. I think I finished, somewhere in the bottom third.
Yep.
But I was like, if any place I should have known what I was doing, it should have been there. But it was humbling, but it was so fun, and just to be able to say I fished with those people,
Right. Exactly. And I mean, there's some absolute hammers in this game. I mean, that like the ones you show up and you just shiver. It's like, here we are.
You're just like,
here's another. I wonder if I could make this out to donation instead of,
Yeah.
But,
it might save you on taxes a little bit. Yeah. If you can write it off as a tax donation.
Right. Yeah. Just let me have this one. But
right.
I mean, it was the same way at St. Clair this year. We got out to St. Clair and I was catching fish in 8-9 foot of water pre-fishing. I mean, hung 90 plus every day we were there. And I'm like, this is, because I've been there twice and that place just, I love it. There's
amazing.
Nothing better.
I've been once.
Yeah. And it's a place that will force you to become good with your fish finder. Like if you don't use your fish finder well, it's a tougher place to fish, but it makes you dedicate the time to it. And that's where I really jumped on the live scope bandwagon this year because I got out there and I mean, I could just scope them in the weeds and, you'd watch them move around. And I caught that it was a 21.5-inch smallmouth out there. And I literally had the scope on him like, that's a big mark. And I threw to it. And I mean, this is how professional I am. I threw to it and I watched the bait start sinking. And then the fish and the bait disappeared. Like I didn't even see it move.
Huh.
And I'm like, God, that's weird. So I grabbed the handle of the live scope and I'm like, where did this thing go? Like, and then all of a sudden it just started shaking. And I stepped the hook and I'm like, wow, that was probably the most ridiculous thing ever. So that's, I hear it all the time. They're like, you got to be so good at that. It's like, no, I'm terrible. I'm human just like everybody else is, and that's the biggest thing to realize is that it's all about that time on the water and just, figuring the stuff out, watch your videos. Like when I prepare, like I got pool 13, 14 next weekend and I don't have a sniff of what's going on. Like I've been there 3 times and I have literally caught 2 fish and I just, I don't know what to do. So it's been nothing but YouTube video after YouTube video, just not even so much what they're doing, but just seeing the kind of areas that they're in, like whether they're relating to rock or whether they're in the weeds or whether they're on the points or the wing dams, because it all plays on that river.
Gotcha. Okay. So that makes sense. So, video study is part of your prep and map study too, I guess, because you mentioned about seeing that spot on that reminded you of the Mississippi. And
so the first thing I'll do, like if we're headed to a new lake that I've never been to, I mean, even if I have been to it, I pull up Google Maps first and I just go through areas, and like you'll see the differences in the watercolors. You'll see, if you zoom in, you can get what kind of vegetation's there for the if it's exposed. So if it's got pads or lay downs, rocks. You can find all that stuff on there. Where so I use the Hummingbird One Boat Network is what I use for my mapping because it's so detailed and you can set your colors up so you can literally look at a place. You can draw the map in and you can go, all right, that's a spawning flat. All right, this is the closest, deepest water. They're going to be, or whatever you need to do for the time of year. And so that's where I really start. I mean, that's big. Never just show up to a place and go, I got this, because you don't. I've tried it. It doesn't work.
That's the quickest way to humble yourself pretty quick.
Yeah. But the biggest thing about it too, like I tell guys, like every tournament I've ever been in, one, I got rules. Like one, I never fish against anybody. I'm fishing against the fish in the water. You will never see me pull up to a tournament and go, well, I'm going to kick your butt today. No, it doesn't work that way, because it doesn't matter how good you are. You come off that water, it's a level keel all day long. The second biggest one is tournaments are between 8 and 9 hours. So I need 1 bite per hour. That's what I need. So many people get to 10 o'clock and they spin out. They're like, oh my God, I haven't caught a fish all day. Like, what am I doing? No, like you still got 5 hours.
Heck
like,
yeah.
You're still in the ball game. If you pick up 3 good bites in the morning, you got 1 bite every 4 hours. I mean, and it's all about mindset,
Right.
And never trust your pre-fishing is my third rule, because you're literally fishing yesterday's pattern. You're not fishing today's pattern. I have never had, like, maybe a handful of times of the 150 tournaments I fished that I literally went out and did the same exact thing all day long like I did the day before. And I had an old guy tell me, he'd been in tournament fishing all the way back to the Redmans, and he told me straight out, he said, you're fishing yesterday's pattern, kid. He's like, he said, fish today. He said, don't worry about what happened yesterday, because it's a totally different day. And it's been a huge help. I mean, it's amazing how many times you go out there and, like I said, you take all those factors together and you put them together. And so you're fishing yesterday's pattern until 10 o'clock. Well, then you're spinning because I'm not catching any fish. Well, I just caught them here yesterday. Why aren't they here today? Well, because it's a different day, And then all of a sudden you look at the board and you're like, well, I wanted to beat this guy. Well, now you're spinning even harder.
Yep.
Just got to go fishing. I mean, there's not a person that gets in this game that can't go to and can't pick a lake on a map on a random day, any day, and go out and catch 5 fish out of it. They might not be the biggest fish, but they can catch 5, always. So now all you have to do is find that different class of fish, and you're right in the money every time, and that's just what it takes.
Interesting. And that, you talking about the mental game too, that I mean, it is so huge, because the second I start that spin, it's downhill, man. And I start fishing differently. I speed up when I find I'm like, everything changes, and and that's just a ticket to the wrong side of the standings. So
Well, I was in a cash tournament a couple years ago, and there's a kid there. That's the way he is. He comes to every tournament to beat me, and we're really good friends. Don't ever get me wrong there. Like, we're really good friends, but I know he likes to spin out. It was literally the line's in at 6 o'clock, and this is a lake that it takes a limit of 18s to win. And I caught a 15.5 as he was coming down the dam towards me. I ran all the way down and was working back toward him. So I held that fish by my side, and we worked all the way down to each other. And I'm like, I picked it up with the rod, and he's like, man, that looks like a decent one. I'm like, nah, it won't help. At 6:15 in the morning, and just ruined him. The kid was spinning. He's like, you got a limit already? I'm like, yeah. I said 15, 16s ain't gonna help me. And I hadn't caught, that was first fish.
that's awesome.
But I mean, it's so much fun to get in people's heads because they just, they let it get to them. And it's like, guys, at the end of the day, no matter what, doesn't matter how much money's on the line, doesn't matter, none of it. Like, you have to look back and enjoy that day of fishing,
Oh yeah.
because
Remember the reason why you're out there in the first place.
exactly,
Exactly.
exactly. And once I put that together, like being able to just go fish, like I tell everyone because they're all, well, I'm gonna go do this and I'm gonna go do this and I'm gonna go do this, and it's like, yeah, I'm just going fishing. I'm, I'm gonna go play what plays right, and just hope it works out, because all of us have had amazing days on the water, like epic, and you come to awards and you're like, well, how did I get fourth? Like I'm not, like I don't even get a picture taken here. Like, what's the deal? This is my best day here ever.
Yeah.
So
I had one of those where I thought for sure I had big bass. I called a 21.5-inch smallmouth, and like every other tournament I ever fished, that would have been easily big bass. And then I
yeah,
roll it in expecting, and then they're like, "Oh, big bass goes to Mike for 22
yeah,
inches." I'm like, "What?" Oh man, I was so mad. I was like, "I
yep,
finally got it." And yep, same thing. So
yeah. I've been on both ends of it. I've been on the guy standing there going, yeah, your good day is not gonna make it. And then
yeah,
I've been there like, oh man, like you're thinking I'm not one to like get back to the ramp and blow about it. I'm just like, yeah, I got this in the bag. And then you're like, wait, you get call on me. Like you guys forgot about me,
can
when
you check
third
those?
place is
Check
like
that again?
4 inches more than what you have.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, but
And
I still look back at that fish though and know it's my PB smallmouth, and
Hmm.
it's still a fish I'll remember forever.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. And that's one big thing my wife's taught me is she'll always message me no matter where I'm at in the standings. She always messages me and tells me, she's like, stop, take a deep breath and look around. She's like, enjoy your day. She's like, enjoy it. And I'll tell you what, since I've started doing that the last 3 years, like I mean, there's been some awesome days on the water.
that's a good wife.
Yeah, I wouldn't trade her for anything in this world.
That's a good wife. And talking about, like you hear people talking about, confidence and everything about, yeah, pre-fishing, I feel really confident on this pattern and everything. Your confidence is just, I'm just going fishing,
Yeah,
and that just in itself is confidence. I mean, you're not banking on like anything in particular. You're like, I'm just going fishing. That is my confidence right there. And like that just, I think that says a lot more than just saying, yeah, I'm confident because of what I did yesterday. It's like, no, you're confident because you're here today.
yeah,
So that's a very awesome aspect to kind of look at things too.
yeah. And at the end of the day, like we're all gonna miss patterns. We're all gonna miss,
Right.
we're all gonna miss a bite. We're all gonna lose a fish. There's
Yep.
nothing in this world drives me more crazy than guy that comes back to the ramp when somebody has won the tournament and went, well, I would have beat you if I'd have got that fish in. No, you
Yes.
wouldn't have. You didn't get that fish in. Go to your truck and go home. Like you can't. Like you do not. No. Like everybody loses fish. Like there's
Mhm.
nothing. Like you don't take away somebody else's win,
Right.
because well, I could have beat it. No, you couldn't have. You didn't.
you
And
Right.
didn't, right? At the end of the day, yeah,
yeah, you know,
I got the fish in the boat and you didn't. So
yeah,
that's
yep. And that was like one of my biggest, like even this one, this whatever it's at here, the championship at lacrosse. Like I've been dying for that, because I ran that tournament for a couple years, and like it was so hard to watch and not be able to fish it being home water. But there is nothing that compares to that win. Like it's nothing compared to watching Nick Burnt accept his trophy up there, or his deal, because he's like, he literally got up there. He's like, oh, I want to thank my parents. And like, I watched Bassmaster on TNT when I was a kid, now I'm standing up here fishing with all these guys. And like, that's where you remember where you came from, and that moment was huge to me to watch that guy come up, and he's such a great guy, and like just to see those kind of moments, and
Yeah. To take joy in seeing somebody else,
yeah,
have their moment,
right.
and yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it was so neat to see that, and then to watch him cash again last weekend at the Great Lakes or 2 weeks ago up in northern Wisconsin up there at the Minocqua Roadrunner. It's so cool, like because he's still paddling, like he's out there paddling, beating the wind up, and we're out here, running around trolling motors with $6,000 worth of electronics on it, and,
Get all the
so,
bells and whistles,
yeah,
we're riding up in the Cadillacs,
right,
and he's
yeah.
riding up in the Chevy.
That's what I said. Everybody's like, "Oh, get into kayak fishing; it's cheaper." I'm like, "Yeah, I got about 55,000 and everything." Like, no, it ain't cheaper, right? Yeah, we're not going to my room outside. No, no. She let me hang checks up in the house, so
Well, there you go.
Nice.
Yeah, yeah.
and that's
Oh,
just this year's.
nice.
Just
Okay,
part of them.
that's a heck of a year. Yeah.
It's been, I mean, it's been an amazing year, and like I said, it's a whole lot of just putting the time in through the years, and like I've always been pretty consistent. That's what I hang my hat on is my consistency. I don't care that I've won this one or won that one or been here or done that. Like I just want to be consistent. Like there was a thing that came out today. It said KV had a 8.28% win percentage for his career. That's what I want to look at when I'm done.
Right. Well, and
But
that's when you were talking about, knowing how to fish down south and
yeah,
then take, entirely different set of skills up north and, rivers and different kinds of lakes and reservoirs, if
yeah,
you can do all of that consistently,
right.
yeah, you're gonna do okay,
Yeah, because I mean, you got North Fish, you got South Fish, and then you got Missouri. Like, you know, like there
Table
is,
rock.
yeah, there's it. Like I don't even think they have grass in their yards in
No,
Missouri. There is not a weed anywhere.
it's all rock.
And I tell them that every time I'm down there. I'm like, I'm gonna bring you guys some pads down, and we're gonna start them in Table Rock. And they're gonna have 120-foot stems on them, but.
Right.
Now, to practice that kind of stuff, does it just come from traveling around, or do you have stuff locally do you have enough variety locally that you can kind of practice that kind of stuff? Or
There is absolutely nothing in Eastern Iowa. Like we
okay,
have, we
I
have a
wondered. I
little,
was curious. I was like, I don't. Maybe I'm wrong, but it didn't
no.
seem like.
I literally have one small lake that's 88 acres. There's only 40 of it that's fishable because the rest of it's all blown in and sand from the river. But
Okay.
what it is, it's a trout stream dumps into it, and so like I get to fish spawn from July, from April till July, just depending on which edge of the lake you're on. But I mean, as for practice, it's been a lot of traveling. Like
Mhm.
we have a lot of good lakes 2 and 3 hours south, and I'll load up on Friday morning and take off and then come home, and just fish as much as I can, and that's so many people when they're practicing they get hung up fishing the same place every time. Well, that's great, but that's what you're gonna know. You know, you're not gonna get over to the next lake and be like, well, this one's completely different, but it sets up the same, but the bait fish might be different. The forage might be different, and it's just a matter of finding the different situations, So like for me, like I trapped for 3 years, I literally drove 2.5 hours, 3.5 hours every weekend to a different lake. And my goal was, okay, I'm going to get out on this lake. And by 3 o'clock, I have to have 5 fish. And there was 5 times in 3 years that I didn't do that.
Okay.
true measurable fish.
Right.
But Iowa too doesn't have the big reservoir lakes. We don't have, like our big lake here is like 22,000 acres, and that's Rathman, and nobody fishes there because the pleasure boats are so bad.
Yeah.
But we got Bogie, I think is one of our second biggest lakes, and it's like 6,000 or 8,000 acres. And we don't have big bodies of water. So then so when I'm looking at a big lake, something 25, 30,000 acres, like I break it down into a lot of smaller lakes, because your north end of your lake's always different than your south end. Your south end's normally more clear, your north end's normally more muddy. So you just pick a good mid-range and then just break it down. And once you're in it, then you can compare it to something that you've traveled around and fished. And it helps break that down just a little better. But then you get up to the North Country and it's like nothing you've ever seen, because it's like a cereal bowl full of rocks, and just crystal clear water. Because see, up until this year, I've never used a leader on any rod that I've ever owned.
Wow.
I've literally been strict braid since I started.
Wow.
Because I didn't know any better,
Gotcha.
Like,
Yeah.
all our waters got color, and it's like, so then I'd get like going up there last weekend, I was clear down to a 6-pound leader because I'm like, well, they're not eating. They must be line shot. Everybody talks about this. But I mean, yeah, I even use braid on my drop shot stuff, on Ned rigs, wacky worms, everything. Like
Wow.
all the way through.
And yet I've hardly ever thrown no leader,
Yeah. Yeah, I literally learned to tie one in Texas this year. we were sitting around. We got a group of us from Iowa that all travel together, and I was sitting there at the table, and I'm like, "So you guys really think I need this leader?" And my buddy Jordan's like, "You definitely need it." And he said, He goes, "I just want to break your rods when I see you tie stuff on doesn't have a leader on it." And so then I had my friend Jeremy tie my first one. And I went out the next day, and like the second cast, it broke off the leader knot. And I was so mad because I'd always dabble with it every year. I'd play with it, and it's like, all right, cool. And actually, I caught my PB largemouth when I was just running straight poly, like like a copolymer, like.
Mm-hmm.
But it was March. It was in March. The water was 43 degrees that day. So it wasn't like that fish was fighting real hard. But
right.
It's just like I said, everybody has a style, and a way they do it. And like that's one thing that I've never tried to do is study somebody else's style. I always just want to kind of make my own. And I'm a big power fisherman. Like I hate going slow. I will if I have to. But like for me to tie on a drop shot, like I've officially given up. Like I'm done. It's they always call the Carolina rig the quitter's rig, but no, it's the drop shot. Once you're there, you've exercised every other option there is, And I mean, don't get me wrong, they catch fish. I mean, they catch piles of fish, and there's guys that are experts at it. I'm just not one of them.
I was just going to say that there's plenty of people who would say, "Oh, drop shot's my favorite rig," and that might be the first thing I try. Whereas you hand them a crankbait, they're like, "Oh, I'd never catch fish on a crankbait,"
Crankbaits cost you so much money. So I fished. Little story behind crankbaits. I fished 4 Bassmaster tournaments. I've won 2. I skunked at the Classic, and then I was on Lake Fork the year the MLF was down there. The year Mark Daniels put up like 70 pounds in a day. And I was literally catching them on a square bill the day before, and I had 79 and a half inches in 4 fish on a crankbait, and I lost my 5th one at the net, and it was the only bite I got. And so, like, since that day, I've sworn off crankbaits. I'm like, never again. I'm done. Those stupid things. But yeah, so for like me, I'm a power fisherman. You give me a frog, you give me a jig, You know, if I have to switch it up, I'll switch to a Texas rig. Tons of spinner baits. Like I love spinner baits because I think since the chatterbait hit the market, the spinner bait has really dropped off, so they're not seeing it as much.
Mm-hmm.
You know, where every fish in the country is seeing a jackhammer and
Yep.
punking. You know, but so like yeah, just heavy line and get in deep. Like I love fishing cover. I love fishing laydowns. I love fishing pads. Like the river this year, you know, I got in there. I literally had to. I'd run my motor on 10 till I hit the edge of the pads and my motor quit, and then I would paddle in from there.
Gotcha.
And then I'd slowly, meticulously pick it apart all the way across. You know, which a lot of guys would be punching, but I'm not a puncher because like I like my teeth. And
I've seen some bad pictures of people taking out teeth for sure.
I watched a guy at Fork hit himself right here in the mouth with a 2.5 ounce sinker that time.
Oh.
I never again. Nope, I'm done. Yeah, that's I'm not a fan. Not a fan at all. But yeah, I mean, I love getting into this thick stuff and really, you know, getting into combat. You know, and it's kind of like, you know, when you break that down, you break it down differently. Never cast to the middle of it first. Start on that outside because you're gonna have fish outside and you're gonna have fish deep in it. You know, start on that outside. You can pick one or two off before you bother any of these fish. And normally, when you catch a couple off the end, it'll get these fish keyed up. So I mean, the big part of me having this Clearwater lake up here is I get to watch how the fish act. You know, when you're flipping to them, or like, you know, like frog fishing. The biggest key for frog fishing I can ever tell anybody is throw the thing to the bank. Make sure it lands on the bank.
Yes.
Okay.
When you bring it off the bank, so a lot of those fish will sit. You know, they'll sit in that shallow water facing out because that's where the bluegills are coming by. Now all of a sudden it hears something on the bank, and that fish will literally turn. Well, it takes time. Well, what most people do is they hit the bank and they rip it off there real quick. Well, as they're doing that, that fish is turning around as it's going over their head. Well, now they don't have a chance to get it. Give them that 3, 4, 5 seconds to get turned around, and you'll be amazed the difference it'll make.
Huh.
You know, and it's just the little subtleties like that. Are just huge. You know, it's everybody hangs a frog up by 8 o'clock in the morning. I have the most fun with a frog from 11 to 3.
Huh.
I've caught my biggest fish from 11 to 3.
Interesting.
That's crazy.
That's everybody wants it in the thick weeds, you know, like clear up tight. Nah, fish that thing out 6, 8 feet and slow down. You know, rip it a couple times, let it sit, give them time. They'll come get it. You know, I watched smallies on live scope come 20 feet for something on the surface.
Wow.
You know,
but I kind of always ruled that out because that interesting.
Yeah, it's just a matter of giving them the time to react, you know, because if they can get to it, they're going to get to it. And it's the same. Well, like Christine Fisher put out a video, and this is what opened my eyes to it. Was she was fishing 120 feet of water on Table Rock with a Whopper Clopper. Had them on live scope at like 22 feet. These spots, and they were coming out of the water when they'd hit the bottom of that Whopper Clopper. They were coming so fast.
Right. Wow.
It's just a matter of just getting them keyed up, you know, and when they're hungry, they're coming. I mean, there's like you watch like fishing the deep slop with a frog, like the worst thing to do is pull that frog away the first time. Let them, you know, when they're popping that mat, they're trying to knock it up and kill it. You know.
Okay.
I learned a lot of that fishing with rat wake baits, the big 10-inch rats. They will literally come up mouth closed and hit
push it up out of the water. Yeah.
They'll go 3, 4 feet out of the water. They'll go back down, and literally you just sit there and you hold it and you hold it and you hold it and you count 10, 15, and then twitch it, and here they come, and they just freight train it.
Huh.
And
Wow.
it's unreal to watch. And like fishing with those big baits is something that it's helpful. Would I use it in a tournament? Very seldom.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
But will it, like going out and practicing with them? It's really nice because it'll show you the places that the big bass live. You know, I mean, if you're out here practicing with a Ned rig, you're going to catch one big fish out of 10.
Right.
You're practicing with that, you're going to catch one out of one that
Mm.
is, 17, 18 and bigger, and so, and just knowing, because like I've always taken the fish and I put them into classes, so like your 10 to 14s, that's the little kid class, they'll eat anything. It doesn't matter. Like you can go anywhere and catch one that size.
Yep.
And then, you get to the 15 to 17s. All right, you got to be, you got to kind of have your stuff together a little bit, like know where they live, know where they're at, have an idea. They're the ones that really school up and group up. Well, then you get to that 18 to 20. Those fish live in specific areas. There's never a lot of them in a group, Well, I can't say never. Like around here, they're not,
Yeah.
but and then you get that 20 plus category of fish, and that's a special fish. Like you have to work hard for those. You have to have everything together. They're the ones that are going to ditch it. They're going to they're going to throw that hook. They're going to do everything. And if it's a smallmouth, they're going to drive right to the bottom to try to knock that hook out. They're going to run for your trolling motor. They're they know
they don't get to be that big by
right.
not knowing how to do that. Yeah.
Exactly. Yep. And so like the biggest thing, like keying in on the different, your different size classes is huge when it comes to tournaments too, because if you're going out and you're dragging a crankbait over rocks and you're catching a ton of 15-inch fish, well, that's what you're going to catch.
Right.
You can't expect to go out there game day and catch 18s. That's like you caught 15s there. That's what you're going to catch game day.
What you're gonna get. Yep.
And I mean, there's times they'll move, they'll switch around, but it's normally the opposite way. I was catching 18s in practice, and now they're 15s on game day.
Yeah.
Yep.
Make you look like a total liar.
Well, especially when
here.
you're fishing the spawn, and then the females leave, and you're left with just the males, and you're like, oh wow, this is a totally different class of fish.
Yep, and that's how you put up 83 inches in Texas.
Oh shoot.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like I said, just find what works for you. I've literally watched at least 2 YouTube videos every night before bed for 7 years now.
Oh.
And if I can just find one little thing in there, and then when you're out on the water, it's like, oh wait, maybe I should try that.
When you were talking about how to fish just slightly differently, I went out on the river yesterday with a buddy of mine for the first time on his boat, and we were talking about fishing eddies, and I remembered a Jeff Little video where he talked about when you find the obstruction that creates the eddy, don't pull right up and cast right behind that rock. He said you start at the very bottom where the eddy just tails out. You fish the tail of the eddy first, then you fish the main body of the eddy, and then only after you've tested both of those spots do you fish right behind the obstruction that's creating the eddy. Because so many people go right over top of the tail out of the eddy, and there's fish there. So and he's like, oh yeah, I never even thought about that, and I wouldn't have thought about it either had I not seen that one video that he did and where he talked about that. So
and I mean, like smallmouth, we have tons of smallmouth here in rivers and stuff like that. The biggest thing they'll find with a smallmouth is, like you'll have the obstruction, that's causing the eddy, or you'll have a chunk of something, say you're in a lake. They use that almost like a home spot, and then they roam around it, looking for bait. And then when they're done, they move right back to it. And then they'll move out and they'll roam, and it's just, they're so weird like that. like I said, they're the complete opposite of smallmouth or largemouth.
Largemouth, yeah.
Yeah.
This the complete opposite. And like a largemouth wants to just be glued to that rock. He doesn't care what's going on, because largemouth are just big and lazy. I mean, they don't want to move very far. But once you can get them to react, like the reaction bite is what I look for 90% of the time. I'm not looking for hungry schooling fish that are feeding. I've got to play a little more this year offshore with the live scope, which has been a lot of fun. But I get so tired of staring at the screen. I want to go run brush pile to brush pile, and I want to yank fish out of it, and take a picture and throw them back. That's all I want.
Yeah.
Well, I really liked how you described too, like in your high water where when the water comes up, then you go to the bank, and then if it starts dropping, then you start kind of working your way back from that. Okay, well, where's the next spot they would go? I'll try there. And then if they're not there, then you go to the next spot they would go, and really kind of just work spot to spot until you find where they are in that pattern,
Yeah.
Because they really do, they are creatures of habit. When certain things happens, there's a reason they do what they do. And if you can, and if the whole pattern from start to finish, you can just kind of hit each spot until you find out where in that pattern they are.
Yeah, there's a video on YouTube. It's like an hour and 45 minutes long. The guy talks about, he actually draws a triangle on spawning flats, and the tip of the triangle is where they actually spawn, and then he works his way out, and in pre-spawn and post-spawn, and he'll work his whole way out, and that's what he fishes. Say whether it's secondary points, main points, drops, creek swings, anything like that. And it's definitely a must watch. I bet it's got to be 7, 8, 9 years old, because it was new when I started. Because when I sat down and watched it, because I'm a sucker for that kind of stuff. And like this guy, he breaks it down too. I mean, everything in it, and it's really cool to watch. So,
interesting. I'll definitely have to look that up. So,
yeah,
I'll see if I can find the link for it and send it to you.
Cool. Yeah, that would be cool to include in the show notes. So,
yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, awesome.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, there's so much little stuff like that people can pick up. And like I said, you watch a video and you just take something from it. Don't try to copy it, because like I said, we all fish different,
right?
And just I mean, all these baits, like me, like my confidence bait's a jig. Like if I need 5 bites from noon to 2, I'm tying on a jig and I'm going to work, and you just keep it in the water. That's the biggest thing. You see so many guys dilly-dallying around, and they ball their reel up or something. They're over there trying to pick it out. Me, I've already got it unscrewed and thrown in the box because I know I got 3 more because I suck at casting.
I hear you. That's not a bad tip.
That's really not.
No. If you see one that's balled up, just buy yourself a cheap old reel. Whether it's one of them 13 origins or whatever, $30. Like in a tournament, in a pinch, you can use it.
Right.
Is it my go-to reel? No. But if I ball up a frog reel, because there's a lot of times I'm trying to skip under trees. And I run that Old Town with the trolling motor on the front, and I can't count the number of rods I broke off. And
smacking it on that motor.
I hit the front of the thing with, and you look down and it's just exploded in your face. Like clip, screw it, throw it in the back, flip the line out, cut the frog off, and throw the new reel on, thread it, and you're ready to roll.
Yeah.
Just because every minute counts. I mean, there's so many people out here, that have caught that fish at like 15, 20 seconds to go, as like a tournament judge and a director. I've seen that a lot,
Yep.
And so now you're messing with that reel for an extra 15 seconds. It's over. you know.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And it's like I tell everybody, one fish makes a year's worth of difference. You know, because like the year I won the Iowa AOY, like literally I won it by 10 points on a 10-point system. Like I and you know, so if I lost one fish all year, I wouldn't have been the angler of the year.
Wow.
Tournament of
Wow.
Champions, I went down there and I caught 12 fish in 2 days. And the two that I didn't put
Cold.
on my card were unders. Like
Okay.
I couldn't measure them
You
anyway.
couldn't. Wow. So
Yeah.
every fish counted.
Every fish counted, you know, and then that would have kept me from going to Sweden for Worlds, you know.
Mhm.
And it's just gear's important. Like I'm never gonna sit here and tell you got to have top of the line gear because I won the TOC with I didn't have a rod. One of my 4 rods didn't cost over $50. You know, like I'm literally running cheap $2 line. You know, I just
Mhm.
would. But nowadays, would I rely on that to fish the amount I do? No. But you can always start. You know, like
Right.
I went out my first time with a spinner bait and a casting or a spinning rod. Like I had no idea. I'm like, we used to do this when I was a kid. You know, we're throwing them big old red-eyed spoons when I was a kid on 8-pound mono, and now I got to dial everything specifically. It's like just go back to fishing, dummy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, ain't that the truth? Yeah,
Yeah,
I started with all spinning rods. Like I didn't get into using a bait caster until maybe my third, fourth year of
yeah,
fishing.
yeah, and that it's what I said. You know, like when we're kids, you know, fishing with our parents, or you know, fishing just out back, or running down to the creek or whatever. Like, tell me what pound line you had, because I had no idea. Like,
Right.
Whatever it came with.
like I always tell my dad, I need more string on my pole. You know, like we didn't know no better, and we're still catching big fish. You know, and just not a care in the world.
Exactly.
And
Right.
and
Right.
that can definitely be translated to the tournament game. You know, don't stress about your equipment. You know, don't ever think. My big thing is like I go to a tournament, don't ever think you're out of it. You know, because anybody can win a tournament at any time. It's just you. I mean, the big, you know, the thing that sets people apart is the consistency of it. You know, you look at your Jodies, your Guillermos, your Cody Miltons, you know,
Russ.
all those guys are super consistent. You know,
Yes.
they're at the top of the game all the time, and repetitiveness always sinks in, and that's you know
Mhm.
that's why everybody says these are the guys. You know, because they're always there.
Yeah.
You know, but there's a ton of tournaments that a guy that's never fished a tournament before wheels up and just puts the smackdown on everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're just like, what?
Right?
You
The
get
best
so
is
mad.
the best is the guy that shows up. You've been pre-fishing a place for like 2 weeks, you know, and you're like, "Oh, I got him dialed in. This is gonna be good." And then you get there, and this guy beats you by like 8 inches, and he's like, "Well, yeah, I heard about this tournament yesterday. I just figured I'd come down and see what it was about."
I was just out here having some fun, you know?
That's right.
Like, I didn't think anything of it. And you're just sitting there like, shut up.
We had a tournament. I'll never forget this. It was the beginning of 2018, and it was one of the first years I was tournament directing. And this guy come over, and he's like, "Hey, we got a problem." And I'm like, "What's that?" And this guy had signed up for the tournament, didn't have a clue who he was, you know. And he's like, "I think that guy's fishing with live bait." And I'm like, well, I said, "I'll wheel over and see what's going on." Sure enough, pull up. He's got a minnow bucket. He's sitting there on the water. And I'm like, "So how's it going, bud?" He's like, "Man, we're whacking them today." I'm like, "Oh, yeah?" He's like, "Yeah." He said, "They love these live crawdads." And he flips another one up. He had no idea that you couldn't use live bait.
It's live bait. Yeah. Oh man, probably the very first tournament I judged, I couldn't believe how many people had horrible hog troughs. Like
Oh my God.
The white hog troughs. I was like, dude, I can't make out that it's a board, let alone that there's lines on it. Come on, man.
Yeah, definitely.
The
That's
Sharpie skills was just not, that was not a thing.
the best. There's a photo. I'll see if I can find it. I see if I still got it. But I got it sent to me. It was from a very, very large tournament down in the southeast, possibly the first one ever. And the guy had taken his tourney tag and wrapped it around the fish and around the board, and just
So it's
held
holding
his
the
hands
fish on
back
there.
and just taking pictures of it. I'm like, this is amazing. I'm keeping this picture forever.
I think I've heard of that photo before.
Yep.
Well, it's not going to jump, I guess, at that point.
Right. I
That's-
mean, hey, whatever works, right? I mean, I've seen, you know, the whole fish grip still in the mouth, you
Yeah.
know, like, yeah. You
Yeah.
gotta give them points for creativity, man. I mean, hey.
Right? Just holding her down. That's all I was doing.
That fish
Well,
ain't
you
going
know,
nowhere.
For like a new angler that wants to get into it, like just read the directions, you know?
Yeah.
Like
Yes.
Sure you know the rules.
It's-
you know.
it's so much more condensed today than it was 7-8 years ago when it was 13 pages of we won't even say the organization, but there was 13 pages of rules and you're going through it like, well, can I even fish? Like,
Yeah.
you know, and like just make sure you read the rules and ask questions. Like I always had a running thing with all my guys when I was running tournaments. I said, here's the deal. Like if you got a question about a fish and you can't, put it in your net and come find me. Or wing over to one of these guys, like they'll help you.
Oh, yeah. And that's another cool thing about our sport is that, you know, more often than not, if you ask somebody for help, they're going to help you.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep. Oh yeah. I've seen a lot of celebrations on the water, you know, like being a tournament director and like watching these guys come up through the ranks. You know, I've been in it since 17, 18, you know, and just watching the new angler that shows up, you know, paddle kayak strapped to the top of his van. And now he's out here smacking tournaments every weekend. And, you know, and it's cool to watch the come up with all these people and how they progress, you know. And that's one thing with like on social media, you know, that's like I surprise Susie when I come down a creek at Madison Chain, you know, because I knew who she was from social media because she's been a come up story too. You know, I mean, you started at the bottom struggling and now you're here, you know, like,
Right.
and that's the cool stuff to watch is people that overcome that sort of stuff on the water and get better as anglers, you know. And like I said, the anglers nowadays are 10 times better than they used to be.
Oh yeah.
I mean, even
sometimes.
Yeah, the new guys coming into the sport, you know, we got a couple young kids here in Iowa that, like this old guy's going to have to go lay down here pretty quick.
Yeah.
You're not kidding. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, and there's so many resources available to them. And I mean, that's the cool part, you know, like I tell all these kids, you know, I'm like, get into it. Trust me, you won't regret it.
Oh yeah.
It's a lot cheaper than most things you can do in life sometimes.
Yeah.
Depending, but yeah.
Right.
It helps you stay out of trouble too.
To at least get started with. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yep. And that's, you know, like I say, you can go from mild to wild. You know, next thing you know, it becomes your next addiction. And 30 grand in tackle and 40,000 and you know, you call your insurance guy and you're like, hey, I need to insure all my equipment for about 55,000. And he's like, well, you're gonna have to send pictures. And I'm like, well, which parts of it do you want?
What proof do you want?
Yeah,
I can show you all of it.
Yeah.
I can give you corners with that much in it.
Do you take panoramic views, you know? Yeah.
Right. That's Tackle Warehouse calls me every Christmas morning. They're like, hey, we love you. Omnia's getting it this year.
Yeah,
Omnia's
right.
like, they send me like 6 packs of beef jerky every time because
Oh my gosh, it's great.
$250 a week. It's
Wow.
like,
Yeah, I got a package
yeah,
of it.
yep. Don't be telling my wife though, because I tell her it's because I'm a good customer.
Oh shoot. Definitely good times.
Yeah,
Oh man.
yeah. I love Omnia. They are my addiction.
Yep. Them, Tackle Warehouse, and
Yep,
Bass Pro. I mean, yeah,
yep.
got a Bass Pro in town, and
That'd be all right.
Yeah, I got to drive for my
pretty
Bass
nice.
Pro.
Yeah,
I mean, it's like 25 minutes, but yeah, still.
I got 3 hours in my closest one.
Oh, that's brutal.
Yeah,
I
that's
got
why
about
I'm
40 minutes, I think. So not as bad, but yeah.
It definitely helps in the wintertime because, like, like December, January, and I'm bored. I'm like, I'm just gonna go walk around Bass Pro, stare
Yeah,
at the fish tank for a while.
Yep.
yeah. And see, we're sitting on a block of ice. So,
Right.
like, my wife just started kayak fishing with me, but she is a diehard ice fisherman.
Huh.
So, like, I don't get a break. It's literally as soon as I
Transition
put
right into
yeah, as soon as I put the kayak away, it's time to get the tent out and cleaned up, make sure the heater works, and it's time to go.
Cool.
Never been ice fishing.
Same here. That's one thing I have not tried.
Come on
Yep.
over.
Heck yeah.
Come on up. We'll take you.
Heck yeah. I'll have to take you up on that.
Definitely. It's a blast. I mean, and she gets such a kick out of it.
That's awesome.
Good.
Heck yeah. Well, we've definitely been talking for well over an hour, so this has been awesome, though. I mean, definitely
Yeah.
some awesome knowledge, great insight.
Especially the mental stuff. That's so helpful.
Yeah, that's definitely going to help me, in a couple of weeks because I got my championship on way northern Wisconsin. I'm just like,
Yep.
but like, just remembering, okay, remember where I'm at, and just always, just think,
Yeah.
It can be won in the last half hour.
Yeah.
I mean, it was, gosh, what year was, the first national championship when it was down in Shreveport, Louisiana. Was that 18 or 19? God, I can't remember now. Anyway, day one. Yeah, day one, I was having a struggle bus of a day, and then I put something together in the last 40 minutes.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, anything can happen.
Yeah. It's like I said, I've placed and cashed checks in more tournaments in the last 3 hours than I ever have the first 3. Like I tell him all the time because I got one buddy that he calls me all the time. He's like, "So, what time you launching tomorrow? 11?" Like, no point in wasting the morning, at least sleep in.
Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, just and being able to stick it out. Mentality is huge when it comes to sticking it out, especially on them tough days.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing I strive for is that 5 bites. If I know it's like, I love the grinders. I love the days like Chick when I won the Bassmaster the first time. I literally had 6 bites all day. And
wow.
I called my wife at the time, or I called her, my wife now, I guess. She was a girlfriend then, but I called her at 11 o'clock and she's like, "How you doing?" I'm like, I need 3 bites in, like 3 hours. I'm like, I'm feeling good. She's like, "Are you confident?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "I'm throwing a frog." I'm like, "How can you not be confident?" And yeah, it was literally, I got my last 21 and a half with like 15 minutes left.
Wow.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. Because she's like, well, what if you don't get 3 bites? I'm like, then I come home with the same amount of money I would if I caught small fish.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
it ain't about the money. It's about trying to make it happen,
Right.
And
Right.
we rolled the dice and gambled, and we won that one, and that's sometimes it's like I said, it's big situational, whether you're fishing for AOY or you're just showing up like the Bassmaster event on the river. Like I was going to go there and I was either going to catch a big limit or I wasn't going to catch anything, and at the end of the day, you just got to swallow that. Because I mean, what good is a 52nd place, when you're fishing one event for the year, So I mean, it's all about where you're, how you look at things, Like I went to Possum Kingdom Skunk Day 1. I left the tournament because I knew the water that I had was down in areas where other people were fishing, and I wasn't going to step in on them just to save a little face in a tournament. Like it is what it is. You're there for all or nothing. Nobody remembers second. I mean, we all do. It was Joe McElroy, but I mean, when it comes to that, but where like if you're fishing AOI, then you have to, you gotta stick with it and grind out everything you can, because I mean every point counts.
That's right.
So, it's like I tell guys, I'm like, hanging your hat on one win's nothing. Hang your hat on them AOYs, because that shows your consistency, and that shows whether you can hang or not.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
You don't get there without being consistent. Exactly.
Yeah.
That's the true measure, right?
Yeah, and I mean,
Yep.
one bad event is the difference between first and second. I mean, even and by one bad event, I mean like first or third. That's how tight these points races are anymore.
Right.
Yeah. Yep. Wow.
That's
Crazy.
Well,
Well,
Tyler,
Tyler.
go ahead, Susie. You got it.
Get him up here before he keeps talking.
No, I love it, man.
Yeah.
Holy cow, yeah. I wanted to give you a chance to shout out where folks can find you, and also any sponsors that you have that you want to shout out.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can find me on Facebook just under my normal Tyler Cole, and then on Instagram at TC Iowa Fishing, which I'm terrible at social media. Like I'm good on the Facebook thing, but I totally forget Instagram's there. So like it took me
I'm very similar.
yeah, it took me 5 years to get 1,000 followers. So I'm like, yeah, we'll just stick over here. But and then like my team Rain Shadow Bats and Enterprises, they're huge. They build my rods the way I want every year. I can't thank Bill enough for everything he does. And Al was with, he was at Hawkeye, and then he finally retired this year. And hopefully I can talk him into building my rods for the years to come, because he knows how I like them. Mossy Oak Fishing, for all they do, they take care of me when I'm out on the road. Everhart's Outdoor in Clinton, Missouri. If I call down and JB answers the phone, and I'm like, JB, it's time to go shopping. He's like, I'll get a cart. They take good care of me down there. And Bassett Baits out of Rockford. Like Tim was my first sponsor, and like the man has my heart. He's been like a father to me, and he's really kept my perspective right the last 7-8 years. And I mean, like there's nobody better. And I'm sure half the time he's tired of listening to me, because I'm like, hey, what do you think about building this? And he's like, shut up, I'm retired. but I mean, I like the guy he's put together. Like we have my own TC series in spinnerbait and jigs, and like it took us so long to put that together, because he'd send it to me. He'd go, what do you think? I'm like, still ain't right. And he's like, what is there to be right about a jig?
I hear Tim saying that too.
But yeah, I mean, definitely he like you call him up, talk to him on the phone, shoot him a message, and his wife is absolutely amazing. Cindy she's the one that it's just like my wife. She holds that thing together. So, But yeah, that's.
Yep.
I mean, I stepped away from Old Town this year because I told them I'm like I can't commit the amount of time because like I was getting married this year, and I got that all that we had to get done, and then I got a daughter that's going to be a senior starting this year, and I'm like I'm gonna let this go that way, give it to somebody that has the time to dedicate, because I don't want to be on the team sitting here feeling like I should be doing more, but like I told Ryan, like I will never get out of my Old Town. I love it, sponsored or not. Like it's the best boat for me, and I like they did so much for me while I was with them, and so I mean a big shout out to them too. So, but that's about all I got. Like I keep it
Cool.
pretty simple.
Yeah. Well, we'll make sure we include links to all those guys in the show notes, and I'll do some digging on that other video that you were talking about. If you
Yeah.
happen across it, let me know, and we'll include
Yeah.
that too. And but yeah, otherwise, man, thanks for coming on and
Yeah.
just helping us get our minds right for if
Yeah.
anything, but tons of
Absolutely.
other good tips too. So appreciate all of that, and I look forward to hearing the sobriety story too, because I think that
Yeah.
would be a really
Yes.
good talk. So we'll talk to maybe Brian and see if that would be something he
Yeah.
could do on the OG show or something. Yeah,
Yeah. We can definitely do something like that.
cool.
So
Heck yeah.
Well, thanks
absolutely.
Awesome.
again for your time, and
All right.
thanks for coming on the Noob Show. And guys, go check out Tyler's Facebook and Instagram, and check out his sponsors. And until next time, man, thanks for coming on. Guys, thanks for listening. This has been another episode of Bass Fishing for Noobs, where we bring you the techniques, the tricks, and the tips to help you rip more lips. So have a good night. Did you have it queued up, Susie?